everyone. I was taking attendance, so that's why uh there's a little bit of a delay. We'll give a couple minutes in case anyone's running late. I am Stormy Scott. I am one of the chapter health specialists, and we have our fabulous NSB director as well here with us.
I might have to accidentally pop off. I used the wrong Zoom account to sign in. It was for work, so I will be returning shortly.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming today. Just gonna wait a couple more minutes just in case anyone else shows up. I hope you all are having a great weekend. And then we will be having the cameras on as well. I understand like if you're driving or something like that, it's okay not to have the camera on, obviously. Um, but if you are able to turn it on, that would be great. All right, let's get this party started and talk about Chapter Standards Board. Super exciting. Um, it's everyone's favorite topic. No, I'm joking. But it's a very important topic, and those on Chapter Standards Board know exactly what I am talking about. And so we're very excited to talk about that today. So, Chapter Standards Board. It is short for CSB. It is the judicial body of your chapter. It helps determine and approve membership statuses. It determines if members are violating national or local policies or constitution and bylaws, enforces chapter policies and procedures, not meeting requirements, imposing fines. The vice president or VP should be the chair of your CSB. And the VP is responsible for operating the CSB in accordance with your chapter constitution and or bylaws. So as a fun warm-up question, my question out to y'all is, are you a VP or a CSB member or just an active member attending this OLA? Anybody can answer first or put it in the chat. Oh, here we go. CSB, CSB. I'm just reading the chat. CSB, CSB, VP, 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 CSB. Awesome. I'm driving alternate. Perfect. Awesome. So lots of VPs, CSBs. That's wonderful. Chapter president. That's awesome. This is very important and informational. So that's wonderful. And let's continue with our CSB journey. Things to consider with CSB. Does your CSB operate how it is set forth in your constitution and bylaws at a chapter. This is really important because in order to be enforcing the chapter constitution and bylaws, you need to be practicing the chapter constitution and bylaws. So if it's not, ask yourself, why is that the case? Do changes need to be made? And maybe nothing needs to be made because it's operating how it's supposed to. How are members chosen to serve on your CSB? This is really, really important. Sometimes, you know, as chapters age, that process needs to change. And so maybe it's time to consider thinking about changing that or keeping it as is. Make sure that process is up to date with how your chapter currently operates. How can you ensure that your CSB represents your membership? This kind of goes back to, you know, does your CSB process need to be updated with the times? Specifically when it comes to diversity. And do you know how to conduct a CSB meeting properly? That part's really important, especially with how important CSB is and the meetings are with the content that's related to the meetings. Who serves on CSB? Things to consider is how many members will you have on CSB, or how many members do you need based on your chapter size? How many exec officers will be on the CSB, and how many non-exec will there be? Who else can sit in on CSB meetings? Is it the president? Is it the secretary? Sometimes I've come across chapters that have the president act as the secretary for CSB. Things to consider. There should be an odd number of CSB members. The VP chairs CSB and should only vote in the case of a tie. The size of CSB can and should vary depending on the size of your chapter. A good standard to follow is 10 to 15% of your chapter should be on CSB. Exec members may be specific officers every year per your constitution and bylaws, or they may vary. Every chapter does it a little bit different. Not every exec member will want to be on CSB. Recommend having a balanced number of exec and non-exec. You don't want to have it whole bunch of exec members and not a lot of non-exec members. How should CSB be chosen? Members should be elected if possible, so that the entire chapter has a say on who serves on CSB. The president should not appoint CSB members, similar to the VP. And if the chapter chooses to appoint members to CSB, it should be an appointment by the exec board at a minimum. I always recommend the election route, makes it really easy. What is expected of CSB members? And I'm sure as a lot of you VP and CSB folks that are on this meeting, you know, this I think is really, really important, is the confidentiality. Maintaining confidentiality. You do not talk about decisions outside of CSB. All CSB meetings are confidential. Things to consider, or do your members have to sign a CSB confidentiality statements? Fun fact, even if those statements are not signed, it's still confidential. What happens to a CSB member who breaks confidentiality? Those are things to consider. Treat individuals fairly. That's a big part of the whole CSB process. Fairly and objectively, or unobjectively. Follow standard procedures in your decisions. Follow applicable national procedures. NSB can overturn CSB decisions if procedures are not followed. So the procedures and having that down is really, really important. Another statement that's kind of come out recently, I love, and I personally have loved it, is make sure to check your bias as well at the door. That's a new one. So when it comes to CSB meetings, how often should CSB meet? It should be at least once a month. And typically the reason that is because usually September is membership statuses. October is usually when mid-semester checks happen. And November is usually when you get close to activation and folks need to pay their fines or make sure they're meeting their activation requirements. So typically it's about once a month at least. But it can happen more. So whenever there is an issue to take care of, there's membership conflict or anything like that, a standard time should be scheduled, and meetings can be canceled if there's nothing to discuss. In regards to the format that CSB meetings should follow, Robert's Rules of Order are super, super important. Always have the same agenda formats. This one has come up a lot, so I wanted to express this, is names should be redacted when presented to CSB. It should be just member A or member B or member X type of format. Taking minutes or record virtual meetings. This is very, very important in regards to your voting, and it goes back to NSB reviewing the procedures. They're going to want to see those meeting minutes if needed. So it's very important that the votes are recorded and noted. The VP should always lead the meeting and present the facts in an unbiased manner. Common items for CSB to address. And recently, one of the resources that came out was the conflict scenarios and pathways of navigating it on OPA portal that also addresses this. But here's just some common ones that we really see CSBs talk about. Status changes. So a lot of OLA requests, alumni status, disassociation, and violation of national policy must go to NSB. So if the CSB is like, this is a violation of national policy, bye, so long, it goes straight to NSB. No further discussion needed. In regards to the leave of absence, it can't be a first semester or a third LOA semester request. Those go straight to NSB. Emergency LOA requests, those happen. So those are things that get addressed. LOA due to academic probation, that happens, unfortunately, and sometimes that LOA semester is needed to improve those academic situations. In regards to alumni status, they are no longer enrolled at the university. They're in their final term of study, and they've been an active member for 4 years or 8 semesters. That distinction is sometimes needed in case of how they enter in the academic years. So if they start in December and whatnot, sometimes the semesterly count is a little bit easier. Disassociation, voluntary failure to complete local and or national requirements, failure to meet financial requirements. And once again, want to emphasize this, violation of national policy must go through NSB. So if there's a violation, you just send it straight that way. How CSB can be used as a resource for chapters and all members, for the chapter and all members. So this is something I really am passionate about when it comes to CSB. I think a lot of times, and y'all might feel this as well, is that a lot of times CSB gets the scary vibes, and because of the things that y'all have to discuss on CSB. But I really am passionate about how it's a tool, it's a resource that members can use, because sometimes they need just some extra help. sometimes they think they got it and it's not working out, and they just need some other folks to help them get across the goal line and meet their requirements. And so I really challenge you all to look at it and promote your CSB as we are a tool for you. We are here to help you and help the chapter through difficult situations. CSB is a source of information. If there are ever any questions of the national constitution and bylaws on what they mean, and how it impacts the members, any national changes that impact the members, planning LOA semesters and ways to meet requirements. Remember the national LOA rules, no consecutive LOAs. And so that may challenge you, may challenge you and may come across to CSB that we have to come up with a game plan to try and help this individual meet the requirements because they can't go LOA. So what can we do here to assist them in meeting those requirements? Members who know that they have a difficult major or a few semesters coming up may benefit from planning when they are going to take their LOA semester and being strategic about that. So they may come to CSB and want to have that conversation and seek counsel in that regard. Conflict mediation when appropriate. At times, sometimes conflict mediation will come into CSB, and it's important that the members know about the situation and try and help come to a resolution for those members. CSB knows members much better than NSB. Many issues can be resolved at the local level. A lot of conflict mediation can be resolved through one-on-one mediation or sometimes coming to CSB and doing the mediation there. And that's really a very powerful tool of CSB. Also to help create plans for members who are struggling to complete their service and financial requirements. As I kind of mentioned, a lot of members will think that they've got their service requirements. They're going to do it, right? In September, they just came back from summer break. They're ready to go. They're going to meet the requirements, no problem. But by midterms and they get their mid-semester check on their service hours and it's not up to snuff, they may want to come to CSB and be like, you know what? I thought I had this. I don't. I need help. Can we create a game plan to help me meet my service requirements so that I can stay active while doing all of this other stuff? Like, I need help in this area because not everybody is a planner. Not everybody, things happen, life happens. And so they may need assistance with that. And that's a great way to use CSB as a tool. Also financial requirements. I know a lot of chapters, the payment plans are done through CSB, or I know sometimes too, like they think that they can pay their dues by the due date. The due date comes, they didn't pay it. And so it may be a situation where they have to come to CSB and be like, okay, how can we make this work so that this member can pay their dues and still stay active? That is something that's kind of becoming a newer concept, is using CSB as a resource. And I really challenge y'all to think about it that way instead of just the big bad wolf who enforces the local constitution and bylaws. In summary, CSB best practice is to make sure your chapter constitution and bylaws reflect how you're actually operating your CSB. The way your CSB operates may be unique to your chapter. That is kind of the funny part about talking with other chapters and sometimes at conventions and district summits, is other chapters don't realize everyone does it different. Everyone does it just a little bit different, but the bones are still the same. Consider voting on CSB members to ensure that they reflect your chapter membership. Follow standard operating procedures. Take and keep detailed records, very, very important, as well as confidentiality, it is key and super important and a big pillar of being a part of CSB. There are a ton of resources on OPA portal within the vice president manual and guides. There is even how to create a CSB aspect in those guides. And so I encourage you to look at those. And if you are a CSB member, you could ask your VP for any of those resources and they will happily provide it to you. And now here's the fun part, the Q&A. This is usually the part where a lot of folks want to talk about things or talk about their CSB process. And so I wanted to leave the floor open for y'all for the back half of this OLA to discuss anything that you wanted to discuss about CSB or any questions that you may have, anything. I'm leaving the floor open to y'all. No questions about CSB. How many of you like being on your CSB? There we go. There's some responses. Let's start there. Okay. How many of you is it your first time being on CSB? And then here's a fun question. Why did you want to be on CSB? Anybody? I wanted to help members with any issues they have. It is my first part of being involved with my chapter. Then I became, when I became an active member. I was the same way. Like it was, I was a first semester active and they were like, CSB. I was like, okay, sure. Yeah. All right, friends. And I ended up loving it. So I hope you do as well. I'm secretary and wanted to be involved in talking with members if they have any issues about meeting requirements. That is really, really important. Sometimes CSB can really pull out that kernel of, oh my goodness, our requirements are so high that we may need to take a step back and reassess that as a chapter and can provide exec board with that suggestion. So I love that. I was required to because of chapter standards. My guess is that's an officer in a particular position that is required to be on chapter standards. Yes, okay. Anyone else? I wanted to be on CSB because I wanted to help the chapter run a little smoother with things like drama and other issues that arise. Gotcha, gotcha. That happens. It was part of the position I took as academic chair. I wanted to help resolve chapter conflict. Academic chair, that makes sense. Totally makes sense if there's any academic probation issues. I get it. Anyone else? All right. I have another question I'll throw out to the group. How many of you have been on CSB more than once? More than one semester? And then because we have our awesome NSB director, I'm gonna have her speak about the awesomeness of NSB and talk about, and I'm curious, why did you want to be NSB?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I applied to the NSB position because when I was an active, I had a particularly busy semester. I was like working part time. I was full time in classes. I was studying to take like a graduate school entrance exam. So I was feeling very much overwhelmed, and I felt very supported by my CSB and my decision to take an LOA. And I felt that it was like a very smooth process. And then Omega Phi Alpha was like a really big part of my undergraduate experience. So like even after I had graduated and gone on to graduate school and everything, I still felt called to kind of give back to the organization because they brought me some of like my closest friends that I still routinely talk to every day, see very often. And then I got involved with the NSB as a voting member. To clarify like the structure of the NSB, there's the actual standards board, which is 3 alumni and 3 active members who are voting. And then there's the director, who is typically non-voting unless there is a situation of a tie. So I was one of the alumni delegates. And then I think a volunteer term for NSB directors a year, and the previous NSB director was finishing her term. So I interviewed and I got the position, and have been kind of doing this since about July. So,
Nice. Does anyone have any questions for NSB director?
yeah, I'm
No.
happy to talk about like, what to do in terms of like LOA requests, alumni requests, how to handle any kind of investigations that come to your CSB. If there are issues with conflict, like I'm happy to, provide my 2 cents.
Well, I do want to remind y'all that there are some things that you have due pretty soon, aka tomorrow or Tuesday. And that is the training for the vice presidents, and I think CSB individuals can take it as well. How many of you have done that training already? How many of you don't know what training I'm talking about? That's due on Tuesday. Okay. That's why they wanted me to, to remind. There's a VP conflict mediation training that is due October 1st. And that's for all vice presidents. CSB folks, if you're interested in taking that training, you can totally do that. Just reach out to your VPs and ask to be a part of that. There's also a ton of conflict resources as well on OPA portal. And then of course, NSB and chapter health are here to assist with those issues as well. How was turning in all the membership statuses, friends? Were those good? Smooth? Has anyone had chapter conflict happen yet at their chapter?
We have at Epsilon.
You have? Okay.
Mhm.
And what area? Is it like membership status or just member conflict?
We had a member who was extremely upset about who they got paired with as their little. Um, and like was threatening to drop. And so, yeah.
Wow. Oh my.
Yeah.
That's a journey.
It was definitely a journey, but we got it handled.
That's good. That's awesome. I'm glad you got that handled. Let's see. Alpha Phi. Ooh, what happened there? My guess is they are typing. Oh, a member not fulfill duties. That's always a hard one. Mhm. Anyone else? Missed every chapter? The ghosting? Is this a ghosting? That's a common thing. Yes.
We had, we had one at Omicron with ghosting, and we sent them a like voluntary dissociation form, and they still haven't like signed and everything. So do we just have to wait until they technically break like attendance policy to do a disinvoluntary dissociation, or how would that work?
Was it only that for
So
NSB?
yeah, I think I was looking at the SOP for this. And so technically, I interpret that as failure to meet chapter or national requirements. So I believe that is uh, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's a chapter vote that is required, but it is preceded by what are they called? A CSB meeting.
Yep.
So I would have to double check what the SOP has on that. Um, and if not, we'll probably have to update it because I feel like if you sent it within a reasonable length of time and they still haven't responded to you, I feel like you really shouldn't be waiting for this person to respond if it's just kind of seems like they will never. But I'm gonna look at the SOP right now. So
I know
Thank you for
usually I was just gonna say, usually once they break the attendance policy, that's when you proceed forth. But it's becoming a very unfortunate popular trend lately. So I feel you on that. Lucy,
I'm part
I
of
think you're done.
Omicron too, and yeah, it's been tough. I'll say tough.
Yeah, ghosting is just a thing now. It's crazy. What is the difference between automatic and involuntary disassociation?
So Virginia and I, the office manager who is so great in helping us out with all of these status changes. We were actually talking about that this morning and what means what. So I think the consensus that we came to is if we're talking about looking at the individual clauses under the disassociation rule in the Constitution. So the very first one is voluntary, so that means member wants to dissociate, and so that's under subclause like 1. Okay, so sorry, I'm talking about Article 4, Section 7. There's clauses 1, 2, and 3, depending on what part they fit into. So members may be disassociated for any of the following reasons. So it's subclauses 1A through 1E. 1A is just member wants to voluntarily dissociate, so they're provided with the voluntary dissociation form. B, C, and D is essentially a failure to complete local or national requirements or being placed on disciplinary probation, failure to attend locally required meetings, or violating Article 3 of the National Constitution, which is the only part where you don't immediately go to the NSB. We define that as involuntary dissociation. Automatic, we really look at automatic as being failure to meet national or local financial obligations, or if they are suspected to have violated a national policy or guilty of an illegal act impacting a sorority. So at that point, that needs to be handled by the NSB. So I think there may have been some inconsistencies with how that has been applied in the past, but this is the understanding that we've come to at present.
In summary, chapters typically don't deal with automatic disassociations. I think that's a fair
Yeah,
summary.
I would kind of have chapter leadership think of automatic as only applying to like financial issues, and usually you know, for if it's national dues, Virginia makes several attempts to reach out to the member to either set up a payment plan or you know, get them set up with dues waivers. So it's not like a snap of a finger immediate. The member is usually given several chances at the national level to meet those obligations and avoid automatic dissociation, but sometimes it does happen.
I think that came about over the summer with some automatic disassociations that happened.
Correct. And I think the way the SOP has been rewritten, there are, once the automatic dissociation does happen due to failure to meet national financial requirements, there is a small window to reinstate membership if the member pays dues that were not paid. So there's definitely ways around it, but you know, if you do, I think this is where this comes back to the CSB being a resource to your chapter. You know, like letting your membership know like when dues waivers are due, what documentation is required. I think that's really important because I have gotten, you know, several LOA requests that deal with like financial reasons that may have been dealt, you know, been handled much easier with a dues waiver. So just educating your membership is, you know, very important at the end of the day.
Any other questions? These have been good. Or conflicts that have come up.
And I mean, if there are any maybe questions about conflict that y'all don't feel comfortable bringing up during this meeting, again, please feel free to email me. It's nsb@omegaphialpha.org. I'm happy to provide my insight, but again, your CSB typically knows your members much better than I know them. So yeah.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, comments, or discussion that you all want to have, I will let you all go and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.